was when I ruled the world. It was a wicked and wild wind, blew down the doors to let me in, shattered windows and the sound of drums. People couldn't believe what I'd become. Revolutionaries wait for my head on a silver plate, just a puppet on a lonely string. Oh, who would ever want to be king? I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter won't call my name, never an honest word, but that was when I ruled the world. Hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing. Be my mirror, my sword and shield, my missionaries in a foreign field. For some reason I can't explain, I know St. Peter won't call my name, never an honest word, but that was when I ruled the world. Cause you're a sky full of stars. I'm gonna give you my heart. Cause you're a sky full of stars. Cause you light up the park. Not
Good morning. Can I be loud? Can we be loud? Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. I know maybe it is early for many of us, because also for me, I'm not a morning person. But I hope that the colleagues will come. Yes, please, please. And room is going to be filled very soon. Hey, please. Thank you, please. All right. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to this track session focusing on water. And I cannot emphasize more about the importance of water in the Asia-Pacific region. Please have a seat, sir. If we look into the water using the lens of climate change, I think many of you know better than I do the impacts which will be arising from the climate change, and the number of people will be suffering due to the problem. If we look into the IPCC report, is basically more than 200 million people will be suffering from the glacier-related water supply, as it is going to be impacted by the climate change. And many of us, we know that water is lifeline, not only for the human in terms of the drinking water, but also the sectors relying on the water. Agriculture, fisheries, we can go on and talk about this. So our session today is basically to talk about the water issues and how it is related to the climate change and the challenges that we are facing. So we'll be hearing from the distinguished speakers that we have. I will introduce them one after another, but we'd like to basically divide the session into two parts. The first, we'll be hearing from our distinguished panel members, who will be sharing the broader perspective on the water issues, and then we'll also have the participants who will be sharing their experiences from the countries. So we have about an hour and a half, and I will be primarily relying on the panel members to help me to manage the time, so that we can also have the questions and the queries and engage with the audience, so that the session does not become that we are only speaking, we are not allowing others. So I will be relying on all of you to help me to create that space so that we can have that interaction with the audience. So with that, let me just introduce you the first three speakers, and then I will introduce the remaining four as we move on. So we have with us Dr. Chakapon Singthon. He is the Chief of the Project Information and the Planning Management Branch, Engineering Group, Bureau of the Project Management, Royal Irrigation Department of Thailand. Welcome. Thank you, Dr. Singthon. We also have Mr. Surendra Raj Joshi. He is the Senior Structure and Water Management in the context of the climate-induced, both the slow onset phenomena as well as the rapid onset that we call the flood, the drought, the salinity intrusion in the coastal area. If you kindly elaborate in terms of how to enhance the resilience in Thailand through effective water resource management. I know the country has the coast in one hand, you also have the mountain where the water is also coming. So the Thailand connects not only basically the coast, but if we look into the mountain to coast, so it has the most of the aspect related to the water resource management. So over to you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for your question. Very nice and interesting. But now I would like to introduce myself. Working for Irrigation Department in Thailand, and I am the coordinator of the project related to climate change, working closely with UNDP, and we funded by GCF or Green Climate Fund. Could you please show the slide? As you also know that now Thailand is one of the most affected by the climate change. 2/3 of the people in the country are farmers and facing the impact from climate change. This is a project titled Enhancing Climate Resilience in Thailand Through Effective Water Management and Sustainable Agriculture. We are working with UNDP, funded by GCF, like I said. And we found that we have more often and intense flooding and longer drought in Thailand, more seriously almost every year. And now I will tell you something about my department, Royal Irrigation Department. We are responsible for water management and also construct water infrastructure all over the country. The project here that we're working with work in Yomnan River Basin, which is, you can see that in the picture, is quite lowland, and flood happen every single year, and even more severe and longer time. And even in the dry season is longer drought. Next slide, please. The thing that I think about the opportunity to deal with the climate change problem is I'm thinking about the institution management, like we have to get the endorsed from the government of Thailand. And actually, when the Thailand government will endorse any kind of new project, this is quite new project for Thailand, we have to have like agreement with the international organization like climate change organization that arrange almost every single year for many meetings, like also like today. After we get the international agreement from other countries, then we arrange a project, and the institution in national level, like Office of national level, like Climate Change Department, which is just a new department in Thailand like few months ago. Then we are already as an implementing partner for this project. So we work very closely with many organizations in Thailand, both in academic and also in the government organizations as well. Even more than that, we have to work closely with the farmers, which is the effect from the climate change. And this is what like I give the priority to the opportunity for the climate change. And then what we have to do after that, we have to invest a lot of money for the project. The thing that we have to invest, first of all, we invest on the water infrastructure. Of course, we are irrigation department, like I said before, we have to prepare for the equipment or irrigation system for drain the water out of the area, or construct the regulators all over the place to manage the system. After we have the construction, that every construction in Thailand is quite cost a lot of money, especially nowadays we have, in Thailand we have a lot of gray infrastructure. Now we try to combine green infrastructure with, we got the knowledge and new idea, new concept from GIZ, which is about ecosystem-based adaptation. We try to adapt the gray infrastructure into green infrastructure. And the second thing, we try to improve the information about climate change, that we try to get it more correct and faster. We have to forecast amount of rainfall, runoff, and water in more correctly and in faster. Like we have to, normally we can forecast 1 month before, and now we have to make it faster. We aim at like a week to forecast more correct. Then we have to induce in farmers, like we have to give them information about climate change, let them aware of the impact of climate, and make them decide, make decision for what they have to do for their farm, like make decision on they will invest for the next crop or not, because the season change or the climate change more severely, because it can make more profit and productivity. This is the thing that we are working on. The project is start already 1 or 2 years, but we quite have a lot of problem in Thailand, because like I said, rule and regulation in Thailand different, very much different from the international law and agreement that Thailand already have agreement with international institution. So we spend a lot of time in doing these things, these issues. But however, we are accelerating the project to make it finish in like next 2 or 3 years. But we have to thank a lot to UNDP, who provide us a lot of knowledge about this project, how to deal with the project, because like I told you before, we work on gray infrastructure mostly, but now we have to think about sustainability. We have to think about more people, more gender, and more ecosystem as well. And like I told you, we invest a lot of money. So this project funded and supported by Green Climate Fund. And thank you very much for the World Organization.
Thank you very much, Chakapon, for sharing the project. I'm not going to summarize, but let me mention one particular thing is the farmer, the centric support and managing the water for them. I think that is one of the key things that what this project is aiming, but also bringing the second aspect is the gray-green, the combination in this water resource management. Dear participants, let me move to a regional organization who has 8 member states in the Hindu Kush Himalaya and supporting the member states in terms of managing number of issues, but the water is one. So Joshi, if you don't mind to share us the lessons learned as ICMOD is providing support to the member countries in the context of the water, but if you can also shed some light in terms of the transboundary aspect of the water as you organization is supporting the countries in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. Over to you.
Thank you, Babu. Thank you for organizing this important session. As you mentioned, water is lifeline. And what we say in ICMOD, since we work in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, mountains are water tower. 10 of the major rivers, they originate from the mountains in the Kush Himalayas. But the irony is, in the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, for example, if I say Nepal, 76% agricultural land is not having year-round irrigation facilities. It is dependent on rain-fed agriculture. Similarly, the drinking water and the quality of the drinking water is a big issue in the entire Hindu Kush Himalaya region. And then from the climate change lens, if you see the glacier, you know, the lake outbursts, floods, the river floods, very common phenomena. So from the ICMOD's perspective, when we talk about the water security in the region, so we need to have, the first thing is the multi-scale interventions. This means from local, sub-national, national to the regional level interventions. The second thing is we need to have a multi-temporal, short-term, medium-term, and long-term interventions. So when we say the local scale interventions, there are number of innovations that are made in different countries which need to be scaled up. For example, to save life, the community-based flood early warning system is one innovation. And that needs to be scaled up. This is very simple. It has two elements, the people in the center, as well as the simple technology. It has a sensor and a receiver. When the water level raises, it provides sensor, and then the receiver gives alarm. And the communities pass this message. So there is a time lapse for the communities to save life. Similarly, there are the spring set management. In the Hindu Kush Himalaya region, the natural springs are important source of drinking water as well as for the kitchen gardening, but 50% of the springs are drying up. So how we can revive these springs? ICMOD, together with partners, developed 6-step protocol. Again, it is with the communities. So the springs can be revived if we follow scientific as well as the participatory approaches. The third example, I would give you this solar pump to lift water from the river, from the streams, as well as to lift the groundwater. Very common these days in Pakistan, in plain areas of Nepal and many other countries, which is again a green path. Then this hydraulic ram pump. This is very common in Gilgit-Baltistan of Pakistan, if any participants are here. Now we are also promoting in Nepal and many mountain areas. So these are the solutions at the local level. There are many more, so we need to think how we package, how we can make a basket of options. Similarly, at the national level, what we need to have, is a very good database and supporting the national programs and the national priorities. So how we can integrate these water management issues or the water security issues in NDCs, in NAP, as well as the other government's program. How we can have this water infrastructure, linking with climate hazards or the water-induced disasters. So we can have these sustainable plans at a national level, backed up by the scientific data. Similarly, at the transboundary level that you wanted to hear more is, my next slide, please. So at the transboundary and at the regional scale, the first thing is we need to understand what is the issue, how we can bring countries together, what is the intensity of the water-induced disaster. Then we need to have a transboundary information sharing, because the river floods, for example, if it happens in Nepal, it will impact the Bangladesh and India as well. Similarly, if something happens in the upper part of the Indus Basin in China, it will impact the people in Pakistan at the lower basins. So we need to see how the countries, how the water brings country together so that the issues at the regional level, at the transboundary level can be addressed collectively, jointly. So this is what we are trying to create the hub, to create a platform so that the community of practice or the concerned stakeholder, they come together, they discuss the issues, they understand the gravity and the intensity, and to make a joint plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joshi, for sharing the experiences from very grassroots level, supporting them. So you'd like to continue with this one as
Yeah.
a part of the,
So
okay, please go ahead
the
then.
good thing is, yesterday we had one session, very interesting session on this knowledge the gap with this Lima Adaptation Knowledge Initiative. And Isimod is a convener for the SKS sub-region. So in 2016, the systematic analysis of the knowledge gap also highlighted that, in the water resources, there is a critical knowledge gap. And the action needs to be taken if we want to address the issue of agriculture, issue of health. It is not only water. By addressing the issue of water, we can have this type of, the recommendations. And then the importance is these mountain vulnerabilities, this cascading impact that water, causes, and these multi-hazards. So these are the key words that came in yesterday's session. I just wanted to share in today's session as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I thought that with the transboundary one we are ending, but thank you very much. Also, very fresh recommendation came out from yesterday's discussion and sharing with the audience here. But thank you very much, as I was basically mentioning, sharing the experiences from very grassroots level, small-scale water-related intervention, and also mentioning about the challenges to bring the countries, but also your effort to create the platform to foster the collaboration within the Hindu Kush Himalaya. I think if we look into these two presentations, I think this is very good segue to go to our next, the panel from IFC, the Danish, as we are talking about the climate change, the impact on infrastructure, but we also need to build the infrastructure resilient. And you, from the financing and investment arm of the World Bank, so what kind of the effort that you are taking and to make those infrastructure climate resilience, and if you kindly share your experiences and challenges.
Okay, thank you very much.
Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here, so thanks to all. So I work for IFC, so International Finance Corporation, so we are the private sector arm of the World Bank. So really the ones that lend to the private sector in emerging markets, but also we lend to subnational entities, creditworthy entities where regulation allows. Just as a little bit of background, so yeah, I'm based in Singapore and I work for our infrastructure business line. Just to give you a little bit of sense of how big we are, or how what proportion we lend. So we invested 8 billion in 2023, and of our current portfolio, approximately 450 million is in water. So it's a sizable amount, and we support both private business and municipalities, as I said before. To answer your question, I think I'd like to first go and look forward and to see. Sorry, can we have a slide? Yeah. Yeah, maybe just as a little bit of background. I think this is useful. So as you see, what are the challenges? So 36% of the global population lives in water-scarce areas. Countries are stressed by unpredictable and decreasing availability of fresh water. And, given the pressures of urbanization, population growth, our water resources are dwindling. Maybe also to stress that 80% of global wastewater is not adequately treated. And I think this is partly an answer, I think, to your question, where more effort and more emphasis and more investment can be made. And this is something that IFC is looking at, so wastewater. And then lastly, but very importantly, the fact that user tariffs or willingness to pay for water services is unfortunately low. What does this mean? That means that the current tariffs do not cover operational costs, and that governments are more or less required to then subsidize the capital expenses for water infrastructure. So that's the current state. If we could just move to the second slide. Yeah, thanks. And just my point on talking about looking forward and looking at what are the water scarce regions and the challenges that we face. And if we look to our region here in Asia, we can see you can see the red part, which is South Asia, which is critical. So it's water scarcity predicted in 2040 is extremely high. Places like India, Pakistan. But also closer to here, if you look at Java in Indonesia, also it's predicted to be highly stressed and water scarcity high. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, also maybe just to highlight some trend-setting changes which we think are important in this region, and maybe we can look at two countries in Asia. So India, for instance, we have this Namami Ganga program, where the government has allocated 2.8 billion to clean and rejuvenate the Ganga River. World Bank has been involved closely in this project. It's quite an innovative approach where they've used a PPP model, but it's a hybrid annuity model where to let's say decrease the risk for the private concessionaire, for the private partner. The bank has loaned up to 1 billion to the government, and 40% of the capex is paid upon construction. So therefore, completion of construction, therefore reducing the risk of future payments, right? So they already receive 40% upon completion of construction. So this has actually worked quite well, and the effect is that a lot of the wastewater is being diverted, and hopefully more of these projects will be constructed in India. The national government has increased their water budget by 31% year on year. I think that's important, that the government has recognized this. Potential for water reuse is very high in the stressed regions along industries, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. Just on so okay, that's for India. For Indonesia, I think also there have been really quite a few changes, where the government has passed a law in 2019 which really pushes for the private sector to take more initiative and investments to be done by the private sector. So what this means in practice is that the law grants regional governments authority to work with the private sector. So this is another angle of trying to fast track, I think, investments. Also, there's a 1 billion water fund launched in 2022, and there are PPP structures in place in the country. So look, generally there's a big push for investments by private sector, and really it's improvements to wastewater management and non-revenue water which are being targeted in Indonesia. So I think I can highlight those two countries. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, maybe before I go to this slide, there's another slide here, or piece of information I'd like to share. So how does IFC actually, interact and provide the financing? I'd like to draw your attention to the sustainability finance products that we offer. I think this is very relevant to the water sector. So there are two approaches. So one is to sustainability financing, linked financing. So one is the targeting the use of proceeds. So if the use of proceeds are, climate adaptation, climate mitigation, social or ocean conservation, that's a use of proceed, right? So the entity would then need to come up with like a green finance framework, which is then approved by a second opinion provider, and consequently loans and bonds can be issued against this, which of course would be more competitive than a traditional loan or bond. The other option is to look at KPI-driven instruments. So in that case, there are, IFC would work with the entity to identify the relevant KPIs and what improvements can be made. So if those KPIs are achieved, there is a step down on the, let's say, 25 basis points step down if the targets are achieved, or consequently, if the targets are missed, there could be a 25% basis points increase. So these are some of the, I guess, more innovative instruments that are used by IFC. And I mean, I don't know if we have time, but I can also go into two specific examples. One was working with a water utility in Turkey, in Izmir. And Izmir is one of IFC's biggest subnational clients, so we've invested over 500 million in this particular city, in different infrastructure, not just water. But the latest one was in 2021, and it's a $30 million green loan, and it's basically we looked at the social KPIs, and we introduced a KPI for gender inclusion, and that was, I think, something where inclusion of women in the workforce. This is what they targeted. They felt women were underrepresented, and IFC also helped that particular water utility to strengthen their gender targets. Similarly, another project was in Brazil. It's a state-owned utility, Corsan, but here the KPIs were more to do with non-revenue water. The target was that all, the water losses should be below 35%. So just to give you a bit of an indication or examples of what kind of projects and where this kind of stretch target can lead to more competitive financing. And very quickly, just also examples of advisory solutions. So IFC engages directly with clients, and this is, for instance, with water utilities. We can address, different topics from climate change adaptation and mitigation, financial and operational and social and governance advisory. So you can, I don't want to read them all through or mention them all, but there are different topics, from carbon credits to sewage sludge management, which of course is a big topic and quite complex, tariff reform, gender and governance. So I'll leave that with you. I don't know how I'm doing with time. I can keep going, but maybe it's better to stop.
I know that you can keep going because of the large experience that you have, not only implementing the project, but the different tools that you have, as well as the advisory services. But let us see whether we have the additional queries and the questions that might allow you to also elaborate some of the interventions. Dear participants, we have heard from the speakers covering the country-specific, the experiences, the regional organization providing the support, but also the private investment, the arm of the World Bank, who has basically not only covering this region, but also have the experiences from the other regions. And many of those may be the relevant to the countries that you are representing here. So I'd like to just open for any questions from the audience to any of those three panel members to elaborate any parts that what they have shared. Please feel free to raise your hand, or if you don't mind, you can come and then queue here. We have a microphone standing in the middle. So please feel free to raise your hand or come here and ask your question. All right. I know that the silence can mean two things, that what they have presented, you don't understand anything of it, or you have fully understand what they have presented. But I will be more in favor of the later part of my statement, that it was very clear what the three panel members presented and shared their experiences. But colleagues, it is not basically ending our conversation, but we'll be hearing from four more the panel members. But think about your queries and the questions. It's not necessarily that you are losing the opportunity not to ask the question of the three panel members. We'll come to end of the four presentation and opening up again for you to ask the questions. So with that, let me move to our next speaker, who is from Mongolia, and many of you may know the harsh weather condition in Mongolia. And this is probably the country where the temperature fluctuated the most, from plus 45 to minus 40 or 42. So that is the diversity in terms of sometimes minus 50. So it's correcting me. Okay? So that is the range in terms of the fluctuation of temperature in one country. And we may not be able to find another country which is facing the same level of the extreme in terms of the temperature. So we'll be hearing from Mr. Batmum Damdurji. He is the senior officer for the intensive livestock husbandry, and he works for the Department of the Livestock Policy Implementation and the Coordination under the Ministry of Food, Agriculture and Light Industry in Mongolia. So as we have heard about the examples, and you are basically one of the key sectors of Mongolia in terms of the livestock. So in terms of the strategies and the technologies, what kind of the strategies and technologies that the Mongolia is harnessing to address the adverse impact of climate change, including as we are talking about the water resources. So if you kindly elaborate on the water production and the livestock policy and the water resource management and your experiences in Mongolia. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. First, let me give you a brief information about the country of Mongolia. Mongolia is more than 3,000 kilometers away from the sea. And between China and Russia, total area is 1.5 million square kilometer. Population is very low, 3.4 million. We divide normally territory into two parts, because this is really important, especially for the climate change. Yeah, first the northern region, the second the southern region of the country, because north and southern are geographically very different each other. The geographical feature creates environmental differences in reality. For the northern regions, the rich in water reserves of forested, high mountains, beautiful lakes, rich in wild birds and animals. For the southern region, sandy, often even desert, limited reserves of water, rich and wildlife and camels. Okay, global climate change in different in the southern and the northern regions of our country. Do you understand this well? The reason why I'm explaining this is that the natural rainfall in these two regions is different. There are differences such as plant growth, the pasture capacity, and water reserves. I want to say that change in more effective to the Gobi region. Okay, just now a little bit about water resources management of Mongolia. Generally, the territory of Mongolia belongs to 3 drainage basins. First is the Arctic, the Ocean Basin. Second is the Pacific Ocean Basin. Third is the Central Ocean Internal Drainage Basin. According to the classification of the water basins, only underground water can be used in the Gobi region, only groundwater. Yellow colored part you can see in other regions, surface water and groundwater are used. In precipitation and flood, water can be collected from the high mountain areas, also from the watersheds, also from the northern region. In case of surface water is used only in summer and autumn, autumn. Water consumption is limited in this area by season. There is due to fact that most rivers freeze in winter season. As for Gobi, the main way to supply water to Gobi region is to transport water from the north, and this kind of project cannot be implemented due to its high cost risk. But we have prepared the drawings and projects for water transportation. Or other solution to transport and process coal, gold, silver, and molybdenum in the northern region to the southern region to the northern region. Therefore, groundwater is the main source of drinking, industrial, and agricultural water in Mongolia. Approximately 100% of the house and businesses in the southern region of Mongolia use normally groundwater to meet the domestic, industrial, and agricultural water supply needs. For more thousand years, groundwater has been used by families, herders family throughout Mongolia. Okay. Water issue in the Gobi, how critical is it? A little about it. The south of the Gobi is the site to such major mining projects. For example, Oyotolgo, copper mine, gold. The Mongolian rich coal resources. Coal mine mainly concentrated in the Gobi, East Gobi region. Mining supply. Okay. Now I talk about the rangeland management of Mongolia. Okay, just rangeland Mongolia are relatively well conserved, and they are not only source for existing for livestock and unique home, but the wildlife, birds, and other components of the ecosystem. Okay, I say here some conclusion. For Mongolia has a very rich rangeland resources, but what are the problems with rangeland? The answer is that rangeland sources have heavily degraded in the past 10 years. When speaking of the futures of rangeland sources, we often make a summary in two sentences. First is Mongolia is drought-prone water-short country. Rangeland degradation is the basic national condition and main problem in Mongolia this time. Secondly, the sustainable management and the restoration of rangeland ecosystems are crucial conservation of nature and for sustainable development of Mongolia. On the other hand, other natural resources are also unevenly distributed. Okay, the livestock policy, yeah. I will say a few numbers on the issues of pastoral husbandry policy. This year, breeders of our country received 18 million young animals. Totally, we have now mostly 90 million head of livestock on the Mongolian pasture. Yes. The capacity of pasture in our country is decreasing. On the other hand, the number of livestock is increasing, opposite to each other. The table shows that the number of livestock in 1990 has increased by 2.8 times in 2020. Within the framework of the second rangeland, what percentage of grazing land has decreased? In 1990, the grassland area was 127 million hectares. In 2020, that grassland area has decreased to 112.2 million hectares. In other words, the pasture area decreased by 11.6%. We have an action plan for Mongolia for sustainable livestock focuses on the principles of the first is implementation of sustainable rangeland management and adaptation to the climate change, improving the economic efficiency and productivity of the livestock sector, enhancing livestock health, food security and safety, improving social inclusiveness in the rural areas. Okay? Also discuss it about it.
Yeah. Do you have other slides, or this is the last slide?
I think this one is last night.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If we have, I will talk later on about meat exporting issue.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Damdin Dors, for sharing the issues related to the livestock and the groundwater, including the use of the groundwater also by the people. So with that, let me move to our next presenter from that extreme, the weather, to the country who is also vulnerable to the climate change, but also has the issues related to the coastal area and the sea level issues. So our next presenter is Mr. Lanthan Ha. He is the head of the department of the Institute of Water Resource Planning under the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development of Vietnam. So may I request you also to share the experiences from your country in terms of managing the water resources. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's a pleasure to be here. Really thanks the organizer to making that happen. So a little bit as introduction on our organization. So we are a planning and policy institution under Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in Vietnam. So the Institute of Water Resources Planning works a lot in providing strategies and solutions that increase the country's capacities in managing water resources and also disaster protection. That include also irrigation and drainage capacities and agricultural production. So one of our recent strategy is the National Master Plan on Disaster Protection and Water Resources 2030, which basically will direct the whole country efforts in the next 10-20 years in providing options and solutions to leverage water management and disaster protection. So back to the questions from Babu. So climate change is creating a lot of pressure to water resources in Vietnam, especially in water insecure regions across the country. There's an estimation that climate change induced impacts will create a loss in agricultural protection at about 6 to 7% in 2030, and that will increase to 7 to 10% in 2050. Talking about disaster loss, it will be up to 3% of annual GDP of the country. So that's a general picture on how we are heavily impacted by climate change. So Vietnam is working on providing more capacities to cope against climate change. We relied both on conventional and more innovative solutions. But we, at a certain point, we realized that the conventional approach, like building large-scale water supply facilities, like mega structure like dams and reservoir, it's also facing a lot of limitations, and we're actually running out of options using conventional approach. For instance, building large-scale irrigation infrastructure is not feasible anymore, considering the intense resources it requires, but also taking into account the new regulations in conservation, for instance, like forest protection, or the very limited lands and resources to relocate communities under disaster or climate change impacts. So we try to move away from conventional to more innovative strategies and technologies. And that's very important because in many regions in Vietnam, that's actually the only feasible pathway to move forward by meaning of innovative solutions. So to elaborate a little bit on these innovative solutions, for instance, we are using and investing quite significant resources in providing more capacity in rainwater harvesting. So, for instance, we are working with Green Climate Fund to build more ponds, like small ponds, in this drought impacted area in the central part of the country. And up to 2026, using this fund from GCF and also with support from UNDP, we're expecting to create 1,500 ponds, and that's going to be transferred to farmers, mostly small holders, to improve their capacities for climate change mitigation and adaptation. Because rain-fed agriculture in Vietnam is really one of the most impacted sectors against climate change, especially also the unreliable precipitation, and also with saline intrusion, like we mentioned earlier, that also put a lot of newer pressures on the irrigation system. So that's part of a larger program on rehabilitating and improving capacity and irrigation system, which the new rainwater harvesting facilities, it plays a more important role actually on building or creating the last mile connection between the irrigation facilities and the farmers, mostly dried and rain-fed farmers. The other options we're also exploring is to improve and to expand the climate-smart agriculture. For instance, we're working with the World Bank and also with FAO in the Delta, trying to see if we can improve or expand the areas, the paddy rice areas, with alternate wetting and drying, so that very good options, because that's it actually have reduced a lot of water consumption by I think by more than half of the as compared to the traditional flooding cultivation, and that also cut down also on the greenhouse gas emissions from the paddy field, and that's actually one of the larger sectors in Vietnam where agriculture production actually emits a lot of greenhouse gas emission, mainly methane. So along with this climate smart agriculture, we're also trying to explore the use of efficient and water-saving irrigation. And I'm not only talking about the new technologies like sensors or controlling system, but also the whole shifting of the country strategies by using its resources and subsidies like water subsidies and also fertilizer subsidies. So it's not only technology, but also in terms of policies and subsidy system. So that about the climate smart agriculture. There's also new initiative on agriculture advisory service. So if you go to Vietnam now today, it's not rare to see farmers with a mobile app, right? And he's or she checking everything based on the information from satellite or from different sensors in the field. So he was talking to durian farmers in the Central Highlands in Vietnam, and we were 1,000 miles actually away from his farms, and he's actually checking the water consumption, the irrigation depths on its app, and he's given every durian trees an ID number, so he knows how well it's been irrigated and how's the production depths coming. So that kind of technology is actually leveraging a lot of capacities from farmers to be able to adapt it to climate change. Another initiative we also promoting is in the forest sectors, because that's an area where it helps mitigate a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So we do introduce a strategy called the payment for ecosystem services, which was about more than 15 years ago, I think 2008. And since that time, $500 million were spent and provided to farmers and communities who have afforestation and protected the forest area. And this its policies in forest protection is now being expanded to mangrove area, which can actually playing very crucial role in protecting the shorelines and coastal cities again, Silver Rise and Salayan Chuzon. So that a little bit of how we are dealing with climate change using more innovative strategies and innovations.
Thank you, Mr. Ha. But let me just capture key points that you're basically saying. One is traditionally the way we are managing the water you need to innovate, and you have provided the examples in terms of the rainwater harvesting, the small pond for the farmers, but also the innovation in the digital era, providing the information to the farmers for managing it. But thank you very much. Maybe if we have time, I will come back to you, as you are from the planning, that how you are integrating it in a national planning system or the sectoral planning system based on what you are doing. But I will come back as a part of the discussion with the audience. But I'm giving you the heads up. So, colleague, let me move to our next presenter, who is basically representing the Global EBA Fund, which has been set up and managed by UNEP and IUCN. So it's in a global fund, but supporting the action on the nature-based solution, covering not only the water issues, but other areas as well. But Nora, my request to you would be to elaborate the EBA Global Support Fund and how it is basically leveraging the water security aspect through the nature-based solution. Over to you, Nora. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much, Babu, and thank you to the organizers for this opportunity to contribute to this really important topic on creating a water-secure region. So as mentioned, my name is Nora Ngen, and I work with the Global EBA Fund Secretariat, or I'm part of the Global EBA Fund Secretariat, working with UNEP. This project or fund is co-implemented by UNEP and IUCN, and it's financed through the government of Germany's ICI, the International Climate Initiative, under the Federal Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection. So this fund was set up in 2021, as I mentioned, jointly by UNEP and IUCN, and is set to run until 2028. So why exactly was this fund set up? The fund is a catalytic mechanism that aims to support innovative projects, innovative approaches, innovative interventions that are being implemented around the world, supporting different types of ecosystems, and just helping people to adapt to the changing climate and just building resilience to this changing environment, changing climate. So EBA, we've heard EBA spoken, I think, multiple times on this panel as well. EBA is a form of nature-based solutions. EBA is ecosystem-based adaptation, harnessing ecosystems and biodiversity as part of a broader adaptation strategy. So the funds that we provide through the Global EBA Fund are small to medium scale, so they range from $50,000 to $250,000, much smaller than what IFC, I think, has mentioned that they provide. We can go up to $500,000 for the projects that we finance, and our projects are generally run for about 2 years, up to 36 months. So this is targeted, as I mentioned, this is supposed to be a small and medium-sized grants or projects. So this is targeted at CSOs, community-based organizations, indigenous peoples organizations, NGOs. It can also be accessed by international NGOs as well, research organizations, think tanks, amongst other actors in the sectors. So the only exception is UNEP, IUCN, and government cannot access the fund. This is because there are other avenues for governments to access funds through ICI, or the government of Germany's ICI program. So this is targeted specifically at other actors who are in the EBA space, who are helping to push this adaptation within the countries, the regions that we're working in. So far we have about 35 projects that we have financed or are currently under finance, which is about close to $8 million USD so far. Next slide, please. So we did a study in 2021 on harnessing nature to build climate resilience. And this was a broad study based on in-depth research and a lot of literature that exists, as well as extensive interviews with experts around the world. And we found that there are several barriers to actually upscaling and utilizing EBA as an adaptation, as part of the adaptation strategy. I can categorize, you can see them all on your screen, so I won't read them out, but I can probably group them in 3 broad categories. Governance challenges, challenges related to finance, and challenges related to knowledge and awareness, as well as capacity. Next slide, please. So just to put this into context, I pulled out one of our projects, an example of a project that we're implementing in this region, and this is the project in Lao PDR that is targeted at the Sifandon wetlands. I really hope I'm saying that word correctly. At the Sifandon wetlands, and working with communities to try and build the resilience of these communities who depend on the wetlands. So this was funded, I think, from 2022, so it's a very recent project that we have on board. And it is located in Champasak province, which is in the southwest of Laos. Champasak is one of Laos's 5 provinces and is highly impacted by climate change, with about 51% of the villages that are near this wetland or near this, which is next to the Mekong River, as you all know. About 51% of the villages in that area experience flooding. And Sipandon is also a very important wetland because of its ecological, it's home to a lot of biodiversity, including the globally renowned and vulnerable river dolphins. So the vulnerabilities of the biodiversity as well as the communities in the areas are exacerbated by several other issues, which include, as the other panelists have also mentioned, urbanization, upstream deforestation, damming, sand mining, amongst other issues. So this project was set up to work directly with the communities, utilizing the experiences that they have, utilizing the expertise that they have, into developing what we're calling, so the main focus would be to develop a multi-sectoral adaptation action plan. So action plans have been set up at the national level, and this would be bringing these action plans down to the district level, down to the provincial levels, for them to be able to actually implement these activities on the ground and have effective adaptation implemented by and with the communities. So this is vital because adaptation strategies cannot sit somewhere in a room in Vientiane, in our capital cities, without actually working with the communities who live through the vulnerabilities, through the challenges of climate change. And therefore, I think it's important, as we mentioned, that community vulnerabilities are appreciated, are recognized, and are addressed. So wetlands in general, why is EBA important for the management of wetlands? I can break this down maybe into 3 as I close. I'm aware of timing. So 1, using EBA to manage wetlands can help to enhance biodiversity and ecosystem services. So as I mentioned, this wetland, for example, is a biodiversity hotspot, and it's a great habitat for a diverse range of both plant and animal species, including fish and other species within the river. So employing EBA strategies or ecosystem-based adaptation strategies can help to restore native vegetation, can help to promote natural water flows, which would all help to reduce things like flooding in the areas, which would provide other ecosystem services as well to both people as well as to nature. Number 2, it can help to build climate resilience, and this is both important for the role of adaptation as well as mitigation. As we know, wetlands are fantastic carbon sinks. They could sequester large amounts of carbon, and they provide natural flood controls by absorbing the release of flood waters. So the third point that I would say the importance of using EBA for wetlands is to build sustainable livelihoods and for human well-being. So the communities around this wetland areas, the communities around the Mekong River, as well as other rivers around the world, depend on these rivers for fishing, for agriculture, for tourism, as well as just to support their own livelihoods. So having people work and live in harmony with nature would help to maintain healthy lifestyles for them, while maintaining healthy and functional wetland ecosystems, and so harnessing the resilience of both the community as well as the environment. So if you'd like to know more about the Global EBA Fund, I would like to welcome you to visit our website, globalebafund.org. I'll also be available to provide any additional information, and would be happy to take any more questions, but for now, I hand back to Babu.
Thank you, Nora. Maybe after the final the speakers at the presentation, maybe I'll ask you to provide information when the next round of the call that you are opening. So just hold on that. So friends, colleagues, our final speaker is Fanny. Thank you. Good to see you here. But before I ask you the question, we have heard about the challenges in terms of the transboundary, the water issues. But you, as a regional coordinator of the Global Water Partnership South Asia, as well as the executive director of the Alliance of the Water Stewardship in Indonesia, how you see the additional challenges that the climate change is posing on the transboundary water resource sharing aspect? So if you kindly shed some light on that, it would be really helpful for us to understand and see what we need to then do, because climate change is bringing extra challenges, not only the challenges that we are facing in terms of sharing. So over to you, Fanny.
Yeah, thank you, Babu. Thank you for also the invitation for us GWB Southeast Asia to share our experience. So, yeah, I think we have to understand that this climate change has been like additional, like as you mentioned, this is an additional issue that we have already very difficult situation also on the ground. So especially if we are talking about transboundary water cooperation, this is, we can say this is an art because it's very complex, and then above this we have this climate change issue. So we have to tread it very carefully. However, based on our experience, so every country have their own needs, have their sovereignty issues. So this is why transboundary water cooperation is very complex issue. And if we are talking about how we can collaborate effectively between the countries, and as also Mr. Surendra also highlighted it before in his explanation about this the role of every level to make collaboration successful, then we need to be very mindful on several things. So if you can go to my slides, I just have only one slide, so please bear with me, but I have 9 points there. So the first thing is that from our experience, when we talk about transboundary water cooperation, it is very important that each riparian countries, they really understand what they are talking about. If we are talking about transboundary water cooperation, so we need to understand what is transboundary water cooperation. We need to do our homework, and that is not only for the people at the national level. You know, oh, this is a discussion between this country and that country, and then so you have this operational arrangement so that people at the government level and at the community level so think that is the national level business. No, it's not like that. When we say that we need to do our homework, we need to understand about this transboundary water cooperation, we need to understand about the operational arrangement, the whole team of that country, and of course the other relevant riparian country needs to understand what is it that they mean by having this kind of operational arrangement, the whole team, from the national level to the community level. And we found that based on our regional conference early October in Bali, back to back with the World Water Forum preparation. There was an opinion from, there was some suggestion from Cambodia, but because in the transboundary cooperation, you also have these challenges within the country, not just between the country, but also within the country. This understanding is not full understanding. Not everybody is on the same page. So this is why I put the number one point there, understanding transboundary water cooperation 101. This is based on for every country, but also every country has to do also their homework to understand what the other country, the other riparian countries that they are negotiating with, right? So this helps when we sit down together and to discuss what we can do together moving forward, especially when we have this climate change as our shared risk, right? Second one is the cost benefit and assessment of transboundary water cooperation. Whether we need to know, every country also needs to know what is the cost and the benefit of having this transboundary water cooperation. That means you need to go we need to understand what is the shared risk first, and then the benefit. Because benefits maybe will not move everyone, but risk, it will surely move everyone. Now we have flood, we have drought, so that will move everyone. So that is the second point. The third point is that you have to have the joint body management. Because having joint body management, what does it mean for every country? It means that we have an avenue where we can discuss with each other, rather than we are working in silos, trying to discuss and trying to imagine what this other is expressing or what this other is thinking. But through this joint body, then you have the platform where you can discuss. So you don't need to find your information in several places, in different languages, but this joint body can help you to sit together and then say, we don't know what is this, we don't know what is that, can you help us? So this platform actually is already beneficial to the countries, riparian countries. So in Mekong, for example, we have this MRC, we have this Lancang Mekong Water Resources Cooperation Center. I think in other basins also, you have this kind of joint body, but it has to be there. Otherwise, everybody's just guessing, right? So that is, we don't want to do something based on guesstimate. That would be a catastrophe. And then the second one, if we are going to talk about collaborative action on the transboundary water cooperation, then we need to also start small, maybe not too complex. Start focus on the cooperation. The best thing may be to start with the. You were mentioned about the early warning system, nah? That is something that is everybody's concern, right? And then maybe we can also talk about this water quality, water quantity. So this is something that we can start first. Start small, build the trust, and then move to another more contentious topics. But that should be one of the things that we need to be able to do. And then on the data collection. Now, based on the focus of the cooperation, you move to the data collection. Now, there are two things that I want to share here. Data collection and information sharing based on the focus of the cooperation, even though it's small, it will be helpful, because then, as I mentioned, you are trying to gain trust. Do it in a small way first, and this is including the data. However, if we are talking about innovation, data exchange, it is inevitable. With the technology right now, you will be able to find information that before we couldn't have. So for example, South Korea, they have to have also information from the North Korea on this transboundary transboundary issues, right? But with the data that they have, the technology that they have right now, they can try to guesstimate what kind of information that they need from the North Korea, even though it's not supplied by the North Korea. But again, you come back to the point where you don't want to do this based on guesstimate. It is very dangerous. It's better to have the official information. So that's why data collection should be done. Of course, the technology will help, but it should not be relied on that. It should be relied on the official information. Now, that is the data collection. And then the joint benefit assessment. Of course, we need to identify what is the benefit, joint benefit. This is something that is related to the second point. And then the next point on the multi-level stakeholder involvement. This is also what Mr. Surendra also mentioned. We need to involve everyone, because maybe at the operational arrangement at the national level, we haven't had some agreement, but it could be also at the local level, the community level, something has been going on. Like in the early warning system for flood, there are already some community cooperation where they can inform other community when there is this level of the river is high enough, that inform other community to say, hey, be careful, flood is coming. So this is already happened. So that's why what happens at the community level needs to be understood and informed what at the national level, what kind of needs that is needed by the people on the ground level. And then of course basin dialogue is always important. This is where we can discuss. This is where we can have more understanding about the other. So it has to be there. Now, and then the last one is the financing. Having a basin dialogue, having the joint body mechanism, it is enable for these riparian countries to do something, because if you have to pay for something that is for the benefit of others, then others have to chip in, right? And usually you are waiting for, I'll wait for you. If you do it, then I will do it. But with this joint body management, it is easier for the donors to come in and then can we help you? Can we provide you with the support so you can do it together? And then you decide how much you want to contribute for it. So these are the points that I think it's important, including the innovation, that is important that we need to have for us to be able to do the effective collaboration for the Transboundary Water Corporation. So I will stop there and we can discuss later. Thank you.
Thank you, Fanny. Maybe just one point to mention is building trust by showing the multiple benefits or the benefits to multiple countries within the watershed, let me put it that way. But thank you very much also sharing the challenges, but also showing how we can move ahead. So before I open the floor, can we give a round of applause to all of the speakers and the presenters? Okay, with that, I have already asked two panel members to provide additional information, but before I ask them to respond to my queries or the questions, I'd like to give the floor to the audience to ask question to any one of the panel members. Or if you have any common questions, any of the panel member will be happy to. Please, would you mind to come forward and speak here?
Hello, good morning. My name is Jana. I'm from UTM, University Technology Malaysia, if you don't know. Okay, I have two questions. So one question is to Mr. Land from Vietnam. The first question is, how do you perceive the concept of water-sensitive planning, and how do you implement water-sensitive planning in terms of planning for water management in Vietnam? And then the second question, should I go with the second question, is to Mr. Fani. You mentioned about data sharing, that is very important, but how do you overcome the barriers of institutions not willing to share, either from government agencies or private sectors due to secrecy or maybe their own institutional policies of not willing to share? So those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, but I couldn't get the exact question. You're asking about water resources planning or water sensitive. Thank you. I think we heard a lot, and I think we heard enough about there's different range of solutions, either conventional or more innovative solutions. In our strategies and plannings, it's at the moment, I think the challenge is to bridge the gaps between innovation and scale up demands. There are solutions, there are innovations for every challenge, I believe. But the very crucial step in our plans and policies is to make it scalable, and that really the challenge right now. And talking about water sensitive planning, we have different type of challenge and impacts, because Vietnam is a very long country. We have monsoon climates. We have areas where there's more than 2,000 millimeter of rainfall annually. We do have also areas with less than 600-700 millimeter of rainfall. So there are different solutions needed for different parts of Vietnam. And so in the strategies, you have to consider a very broad range of challenges and carefully select the right solutions. And so I was talking about the scaling up challenge, and we do have a challenge also in financing because the current financing mechanism is not really allowing us to do everything. So we relies a lot on public expense, public investment in water and climate change mitigation and adaptation. And there's a clear pathway and clear need to find more financing mechanisms. Like we talk a lot about how to bring in private funding into the strategies and plans. Of course, this is really challenging because I think it's a tough issue, not only in Vietnam but also regionally and basically maybe everywhere in the world. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think this is something that we have to of course to face, yeah, on the ground. So first, I think if we are talking about data, one thing is that important, whether this is at the transboundary level and also if this is at the national level, is that we have to agree, the key stakeholders have to agree what kind of basic information that we need to have in order for us to be able to do what we do, right? If we are talking about water, then it interconnects with all the sectors. So we need to have an agreement what kind of basic information that we need to have, and that basic information has to make public. Now, for example, it is not very easy even just to know what are the catchment delineation in a country, and we are not yet talking about sub-catchment. And we were talking about private sectors. We know they are operating in certain catchment, maybe even sub-catchment. And the problem is, if we have the different understanding about what is the delineation of the catchment, then it is not going to help anyone. So, for example, we helped one of the major company to identify their catchment because they want to know who they should be engaging with, the stakeholder engagement and everything. Because in the beginning, there was a wrong identification of catchment. It is not the right catchment, right? So then it leads to another different things that is not correct. So it is important, of course, coming back again, a basic public data that we have to agree if we are talking about water. And you can also categorize this if you are talking about food system, if you are talking about hydropower, if you are talking about water for people, water for economic activity, and so on. But we need to agree what kind of public data that has to be publicized, yeah? Make it public, because otherwise everyone just can collect their own data, especially the private companies, the multinational companies. With their capacity, their financial capacity, they can do their own research. But what happens there? We are having multiple realities, and that multiple realities can also leads to a different kind of understanding, and we don't want that. So that's why it is important to have like an agreement, like start from the basic first. Maybe in the next 3 years, are the data that has to be made available public, and then another 3 years we have to agree that this has to be made public, and then that way we have like some kind of standard and the same understanding on certain things, and to be able to move forward. So I think that will be my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe, Nora, just half a minute, if you don't mind, to share the next round of the call that you are opening up.
Okay, thank you, Babu. So the Global EBA Fund has receives applications on a rolling basis, so you can apply anytime. We do have 2 cutoffs per year. Our next cutoff is going to be in April 2024, and the one after that will be probably between September and October 2024. However, applications received at any time before that cutoff will be considered together. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm not seeing any other hands, and I'm also checking the time. First of all, from my side, I'd like to thank all the 7 panel members sharing their experiences, including the best practices, what kind of the challenges, what are the lessons that we have learned, and also the scope for scaling up and engaging with others. So I'd like to thank all of you for your time and sharing the experiences. Before we leave this, I'd like to also mention that there will be another session starting at 11:30 in this room, focusing on the system transformation in climate, food, land, and water nexus. I'm sure it is going to be an interesting session, but maybe more complex than the issues that we talked about. So please come and join and listen the session in this room starting at 11:30. With that, I'd like to thank all of you in the audience as well for listening as well as asking the question. Thank you very much. See you soon.